If you've got an SDR interview coming up, there are probably a few questions going through your head. What are they going to ask me? How do I answer if I don't have sales experience? What if they ask me to do a role play? And what questions should I ask them at the end? Because here's the thing, most people prepare for SDR interviews the wrong way. They try to memorize perfect answers. But that's not really what companies are looking for. They're looking for evidence. Evidence that you can communicate. Evidence that you can handle rejection. Evidence that you're coachable. Evidence that you've researched the company. And evidence that your previous experience can transfer into sales. So in this video, I'm going to break down the most common SDR interview questions, what employers are actually testing, how to answer them properly, and the questions you should ask before accepting the wrong SDR job. Because the goal isn't just to get an SDR job, it's to get the right one. Before we get into the questions, you need to understand what the interviewer is actually testing. A lot of people go into SDR interviews thinking they need to sound like a polished salesperson. You don't, especially if this is an entry-level role. Most companies are not expecting you to walk in as the finished product. What they want to see is potential. Can you speak clearly? Can you stay calm under pressure? Can you deal with rejection? Can you learn quickly? Can you take feedback? Can you work towards targets? Can you research a company? And can they imagine you speaking to prospects and representing their business professionally? That's the mindset shift. You're not trying to pretend you've already done the job. You're trying to show them why you could become good at the job. And that comes down to three things: your story, your evidence, and your attitude. If you can get those three things across, you'll instantly come across as a stronger candidate. Before we go question by question, I want to give you a simple framework, because this is where a lot of candidates go wrong. They either give an answer that's too vague, or they give an answer that sounds like it could belong to anyone. So for most SDR interview questions, use this structure: point, proof, link. Your point is the direct answer. Your proof is the example from your experience. And your link is how that connects back to the SDR role. For example, if they ask, how do you handle rejection? A weak answer would be, I think I handle rejection quite well. That's not enough. A stronger answer would be, I try not to take rejection personally. In my previous customer-facing roles, I had to deal with difficult conversations and people saying no. What helped me was staying calm, listening properly, and focusing on what I could learn from the situation. I think that's relevant to an SDR role because rejection is part of the job. And the important thing is staying consistent and improving after each conversation. That answer works because it has a point, proof, and a link. You've answered the question, you've shown evidence, and you've connected it back to the role. That's what you want to do throughout the interview. Quick side note, if you're serious about breaking into tech sales, this is exactly what Entr helps with. We have a 6-week tech sales bootcamp where we help you understand the SDR role, build your CV in LinkedIn, practice interviews and role plays, learn cold calling, and prepare properly for replying. And if you want something more flexible, we also have an on-demand course you can complete in your own time. I'll leave both links below. But for now, let's get into the first question you'll almost definitely be asked. Right, let's start with one of the most common questions. Tell me about yourself. This sounds simple, but it catches a lot of people out because they either ramble for 5 minutes or they give an answer that has nothing to do with the job. When an interviewer says, tell me about yourself, they are not asking for your life story. They want your career story. A simple structure is where you are now, what skills you've built, why you're moving into tech sales, and why this role makes sense. So a weak answer would be, I've worked in a few different jobs and now I'm looking for something new. That doesn't tell them anything. A stronger answer would be, my background is in customer-facing work. where I've built strong communication skills, resilience, and the ability to deal with different types of people. I'm now looking to move into tech sales because I want a career with clear progression, performance-based growth, and the chance to develop valuable commercial skills. The SDR role stood out to me because it combines communication, problem solving, learning about technology, and working towards targets. That answer is much stronger. It connects your past to your future. It shows you understand the role, and it gives the interviewer a clear reason why this move makes sense. Few questions you will almost definitely be asked are: why do you want to work in sales? And why tech sales? Now, the mistake here is only talking about money. There is nothing wrong with being motivated by earning potential. Sales is a performance-based career. But if your whole answer is, I want to make more money, that can sound shallow. A stronger answer for why sales would be, I'm interested in sales because it rewards communication, resilience, and performance. I like the idea of working in a role where the effort I put in can directly impact my progression. I also think sales is one of the most valuable skills you can learn because it teaches you how to understand people, solve problems, and communicate value clearly. That answer shows ambition, but it also shows maturity. You're not just saying you want commission. You're showing that you understand sales as a skill. Then, for why tech sales, you want to show that you understand the industry. A weak answer would be, I heard tech sales pays well. Again, that might be part of the attraction, but it can't be the whole answer. A stronger answer would be, tech sales interests me because software companies are solving real business problems, and I like the idea of working in a fast-growing industry. I also like that the SDR role gives you a strong foundation in communication, prospecting, customer research, and commercial thinking. Long term, I see tech sales as a career where I can keep learning, progress, and build skills that are valuable in almost any business. That tells the interviewer you're not just chasing a salary. You understand the career path. You understand the skills, and you understand that tech sales is about solving business problems. This is one of the most important questions to prepare for, because if you can't explain the role, it's very hard to convince someone you're serious about it. A simple answer would be, an SDR is usually responsible for generating new business opportunities. That can involve researching companies, identifying potential prospects, reaching out through phone, email, or LinkedIn, qualifying whether there's a genuine opportunity, and booking meetings for the sales team. From what I understand, it's a role that requires communication, consistency, resilience, and strong organization. That answer works because it shows you understand the basics. An SDR is not just someone who cold calls all day. There's research, outreach, qualification, objection handling, follow-up, pipeline creation. And your job is to start useful conversations that can turn into real opportunities for the business. If you can explain that clearly, you immediately sound more prepared than most candidates. Now, let's talk about behavioral questions. These are questions that usually start with, tell me about a time when. Give me an example of. Describe a situation where. For example, tell me about a time you worked towards a target. Give me an example of when you handled a difficult customer. Describe a time you dealt with rejection. The reason companies ask these questions is simple. They want to know how you've behaved in real situations before, because that gives them a clue about how you might behave in the role. And this is where a lot of candidates go wrong. They try to answer from the top of their head. They ramble. They give too much background. They forget the result. Or they tell a story that doesn't actually prove anything. So use STAR. Situation, task, action, result. Situation is what was happening. Task is what you were responsible for. Action is what you did. Result is what happened because of your actions. But here's the important part. Spend most of your time on the action because the interviewer doesn't just want to know what happened, they want to know what you personally did. So avoid saying, "We did this, the team did that, my manager decided." Where you can, say, "I noticed, I spoke to, I changed, I followed up, I handled, I improved." That makes your answer much stronger. And then finish with the result. If you can use numbers, even better. For example, I handled 40 customer conversations per day. I consistently hit my weekly targets. We reduced complaints by 20%. I improved customer feedback scores. Even simple numbers build credibility. Here's how you could answer a target-based question. The interviewer asks, "Tell me about a time when you worked towards a target." A weak answer would be, "I've worked towards targets before and usually did well." That's too vague. A stronger answer would sound like this. In my previous role, we had a target to improve customer satisfaction during a very busy period. The situation was that wait times were increasing and customers were becoming frustrated. My task was to support the team during peak hours and make sure customers were being updated clearly. The action I took was to communicate more proactively, manage expectations, check in regularly with the team, and escalate issues quickly when needed. As a result, customers were calmer, complaints reduced, and feedback improved during that period. Now, if you have numbers, add them. That could be, we reduced complaints by 20%, or I handled around 40 customer conversations per day, or I consistently hit my weekly performance targets. The number doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to make your answer more specific. Now, this is a great question for career switchers, because even if you haven't worked in sales, you've probably dealt with customers, clients, colleagues, patients, tenants, guests, or stakeholders. A strong answer could be, in my previous role, I dealt with a customer who was frustrated because their issue hadn't been resolved quickly. The situation was that they had already spoken to someone else and felt they weren't being listened to. My task was to calm the situation down, understand the problem, and find a practical solution. The action I took was to listen without interrupting, acknowledge their frustration, ask questions to understand exactly what had happened, and explain clearly what I could do next. As a result, we resolved the issue, the customer calmed down, and they left with a much better impression of the business. But don't stop there. The best candidates connected back to the role. So you could add, I think that experience is relevant to an SDR role because sales conversations also require listening, staying calm, asking good questions, and handling objections professionally. That final sentence is important. Don't just tell the story. Explain why the story matters. This is one of the biggest SDR interview questions because rejection is part of the job. People won't reply to your emails. People will say no. People might hang up. Some days will be difficult. So the interviewer wants to know if you can handle that without taking it personally. A weak answer would be, I don't really like rejection, but I try my best. A stronger answer would be, I try not to take rejection personally. In sales, I understand that not every person will be the right fit, and sometimes the timing just won't be right. What matters is learning from each interaction. If something doesn't go well, I'd look at what I can improve, whether that's my opening, my questions, or how I handled the objection, and then apply that to the next call. I think resilience and consistency are key. That answer works because it's honest. You're not pretending rejection is easy. You're showing that you can learn from it and keep going. And that's exactly what SDR managers want to hear. This is the big one for career switchers. And the biggest mistake is starting your answer negatively. Don't say, I know I don't have experience, but that immediately puts the focus on what you lack. Instead, say, I haven't worked as an SDR yet, but I've built transferable skills that I think are highly relevant. I've developed communication skills, resilience, customer awareness, and the ability to work under pressure. I've also taken time to understand what the SDR role involves, and I'm prepared to learn, take feedback, and put in the work to improve quickly. That answer is much stronger. You're not pretending you've already done the job. You're showing why your previous experience still matters. And you're showing coachability. That is key. Because for entry-level SDR roles, companies often care less about whether you've done the exact job before, and more about whether you can learn, adapt, and stay consistent. This is one that scares a lot of beginners. But remember, a cold call is not about closing a deal in 30 seconds. It's about starting a conversation. A strong answer would be, first, I'd research the company and the person I'm calling, so I understand why the conversation might be relevant. Then I'd open the call confidently, explain who I am and why I'm calling in one clear sentence. I'd avoid jumping straight into a pitch and instead ask questions to understand whether there is a relevant problem. If there is, I'd try to agree a clear next step, such as booking a meeting or sending more information. That answer shows you understand the process. Research, open, ask questions, listen, agree to the next step. You don't need to sound like an expert closer. You just need to show that you understand the basics of a good sales conversation. Now, let's talk about role plays. Some SDR interviews will ask you to do a mock cold call or pitch the company's product. This is where people panic. But the interviewer is usually not expecting perfection. They're looking for structure. Can you stay calm? Can you ask questions? Can you listen? Can you handle an objection? And can you keep the conversation moving? If they ask you to pitch the company's product, don't try to memorize the whole website. Use this simple structure. What problem does the product solve? What does it help? What outcome does it create? For example, from what I understand, your platform helps companies solve X problem by doing Y, which means they can achieve Z. That is much better than trying to use jargon you don't fully understand. If they ask you to do a mock cold call, keep it simple. You could say, "Hi Sarah, it's Carl from X. I know I'm calling out of the blue, so I'll keep it brief. The reason for my call is that we help sales teams get clearer visibility over their pipeline and spot deals that might be at risk before they slip. I notice your team has been hiring more account executives recently, so I wanted to ask, how are you currently tracking deal progression across the team?" Then pause and let them answer. That's the key. Don't just pitch. Start a conversation. And if they give you an objection, like, "We're not interested," don't panic. You could say, "No problem at all. Just so I understand, is that because this isn't a priority right now, or because you already have something in place?" That shows you can stay calm and ask a follow-up question. And often, that's what they're really testing. This is where a lot of candidates freeze. They think they need to sound like a technology expert. You don't. You just need to show curiosity. A strong answer would be, "I'm still building my knowledge of the tech industry, but I've started following sources that help me understand what's happening in AI, SaaS, and startups. I also look at company websites, LinkedIn posts, product demos, and tech news so I can understand how companies position themselves and what problems they solve." I think staying curious is important because tech changes quickly and I want to keep learning. That answer is honest. You're not claiming to know everything, but you're showing curiosity and effort, and that matters. You can also mention a product you genuinely like. Something like, "One tech product I like is HubSpot because it helps businesses manage sales and marketing more effectively." Or, "I've been using AI tools to research companies, practice interview answers, and learn new topics faster." Keep it simple, keep it genuine. Now, this is the part most candidates forget. An interview is not just them assessing you. It's also a chance to assess them, because not every SDR role is a good SDR role. A strong company should be able to explain the role clearly. They should know the KPIs. They should know the ramp time. They should know what success looks like. They should be clear on commission. And they should be able to explain how SDRs progress. So at the end of the interview, don't just say, "No, I don't have any questions." Ask strong questions. Here are some of the best ones. What does a top performing SDR look like on your team? And how do they behave differently from average performers? That shows you care about performance. What does success look like in the first 30, 60, and 90 days? That helps you understand expectations. What are the daily activity KPIs for this role, such as calls, emails, or LinkedIn touches? That helps you understand the day-to-day reality. What percentage of the SDR team is currently hitting target? That's a really important one, because if hardly anyone is hitting target, that tells you something. How is commission structured? You want to understand whether commission is based on meetings booked, pipeline created, closed revenue, or something else. What usually causes SDRs to fail in this role? This is a powerful question. It shows maturity and it helps you understand the risks. What does progression typically look like from SDR? If you're joining as an SDR, you want to know where the role can lead. And one of my favorite closing questions is, do you have any concerns about my background that I can address now? Most candidates never ask that, but strong candidates do, because it gives you the chance to handle any doubts before the interview ends. Here's something important. Pay attention to how clearly they answer your questions. If you ask, what percentage of the team hits target, and they give a vague answer, that could be a red flag. If you ask, what does success look like in the first 90 days, and they can't explain it clearly, that could be a red flag. If they ask, how does commission work, and they avoid giving detail, that could be a red flag. Strong companies are usually clear and specific. They can tell you the KPIs, the ramp time, the targets, the progression path, the commission structure, and the training process. The best companies won't make the role sound perfect, but they will be honest. And that's what you want, because choosing the wrong SDR role can hurt your confidence, your earnings, and your progression. So don't just try to impress them. Make sure they can impress you too. Before your SDR interview, prepare these 5 things. Number 1, a clear answer to tell me about yourself. Number 2, a strong reason for why sales. Number 3, a strong reason for why tech sales. Number 4, 3 to 5 star examples from your previous experience. And number 5, 5 smart questions to ask at the end. If you want to go one step further, prepare examples around communication, resilience, targets, customer interaction, problem solving, learning new tools, handling rejections, and working under pressure. Those are the stories that will help you stand out. Because remember, an SDR interview is not just about having previous sales experience. It's about showing potential. You need to prove that you can communicate, learn, handle rejection, prepare properly, and connect your previous experience to the role. And the questions you ask are just as important as the answers you give. Because the goal is not just to get any SDR job. It's to get the right SDR job. At Entr, this is exactly what we help people prepare for. We help career switchers understand the SDR role, build their CV and LinkedIn, practice interviews, prepare for role plays, learn cold calling, and develop the practical skills employers are actually looking for. So if you're serious about breaking into tech sales, check out the links below. And if you've got an SDR interview coming up, comment interview and we'll share more tips to help you prepare.